On today's show, we hit the ice with the Great Blizz in Kingston, talk with life coach Kim Caple, and award-winning educator Shelley Terry, hear original poetry, hear all about Camp Twin Oaks, and what's happening in our South Shore towns. We're glad you're here. Let's get started. The Great Blizzards of Massachusetts are not legendary snowstorms in our state, but an inclusive hockey league where no hockey player is left behind. We went on the local scene to the Bog Ice Arena in Kingston to catch the Great Blizz in action.
Great Blizz is a team for players that can't play on any other hockey team due to cognitive, intellectual, developmental, and/or physical disabilities. Back in 2011, my son joined a hockey team in Northern Virginia, and he loved it. And so when we moved up here in 2017, there were no teams on the South Shore. So I thought, well, there must be a need for it because we're in hockey-rich Massachusetts. So I did some research, and I started the program in 2019, September 7th, with 10 players. And now we're at 40 here and 27 at our new program on the Cape.
I do like the traveling part, and so basically what happens is that we go anywhere in the United States throughout the country for tournaments, and we happen to go on a Southwest Airlines flight to St. Louis, and then which is our first flight with the Great Blizz, and then I would play as goalie, and then I was a regular skater as well, and then so we would alternate. And then we also went to Chicago for another tournament. We won all 4 games. And so after that happened, next thing you know it, on that final game, one of my friends, Thomas DeWare, he was like, yo, we won like whatever the score it was. And I'm like, yeah, we won a tournament. And then so it was incredible. Like we never win all 4 games like that. So that is history of the Great Blizz.
Fun, the great team, and they do a lot of fun stuff.
I like to play hockey. I want to play sports, or it's just because I was in skating sessions things. I feel like I figured hockey would be something that would have skating in it.
It's an empowering sport. There's a lot going on when you break it down. So we are a hockey program, but we're more than that because in hockey, there's a lot. There's teamwork. So we're trying to teach players how to work as a team, and we're trying to teach players how to be accountable to each other, how to be disciplined, how to follow instructions. And when you get the puck, you basically have seconds to make a decision. You can do 1 of 3 things, well, 4 things. You can either pass it, shoot it, skate with it, or have it taken away from you. So if you don't figure out the first 3, you're gonna lose the puck. So in that, now you're teaching decision making, which is a really important thing for our players, is to make good decisions. We have them hydrate, so we're teaching them how to take care of their bodies. We talk about getting sleep, good sleep, eating right. So there's a lot more that goes on than just skates on ice.
Sports in general, I believe, are really a great way for you to just learn about life lessons in terms of just, being responsible, being accountable, being a good teammate, right? Those skills you can learn on the ice or doing whatever sport that you choose. So it's just really important that sports are accessible to everyone and that everyone has a chance to play, regardless of your skill level, regardless of your background. There's so many life skills and friendships that come out of it, and it's important for everyone to get those opportunities.
So it definitely gets me excited each time I get on that ice, because once I get on the ice, I knew it was absolutely game time. And then, because next thing you know it, as soon as that buzzer goes off, it's definitely showtime, baby.
I like to play hockey, and it makes me feel proud, and it makes me a part of a team. It makes me feel like, it makes me feel like myself.
I see some kids who, in fact, most of the kids on the team probably never skated before once they get on the ice. And then to see them, skating and stick handling and shooting the puck and being able to lift it in the air and that sort of thing. So it's really the improvements that they've made in their ability to play the game. Some of the children have, physical impairments, and I can see them improving their motor skills on and off the ice. So that's the part I like the best.
I've been a goalie my whole life, and I reached out figuring they could probably use a little help on the goalie coaching side a couple years ago, and they were nice enough to have me down, and it's been great. Been coming down for the past couple years, once or twice a year, and it's great to see the development of these goalies and just working with them. It's just really rewarding, and it's a great organization. I'm glad to be part of it.
I was working in the Bourne Public Schools, and Steve Neerman sent an email to the athletic director. I don't even remember why he sent it, but he forwarded it to all the people that were involved with, physical activities within the schools, like the PE teachers and the therapists and that sort of thing. So I got a hold of the email, and I just contacted him to see what he was doing. So that was 3 years ago in 2020.
The community has donated. Companies have been very gracious as well. The Boston Bruins alumni have come here. They're coming for the 6th time, February 3rd, and that's a huge fundraiser for us. We packed the stands here. This place is alive during those 2 hours. So this community has been quite embracing. It's really kind of interesting because I'm like an outsider, if you will, even though I was born in Framingham. I'm still a Massachusetts guy, but when we moved here, I'm considered an outsider. And I didn't know anybody when we moved up here. And in life, you don't need to know everybody. You just need to know somebody who knows everybody. And I found that somebody, and they knew all the people. And the hockey community is really tight, and they're very generous with each other. Everybody is comfortable with each other. And it's not just the players that are bonding in this program, it's the families, it's the parents, it's the guardians. We have brothers and sisters that come out. You saw today we had a sister of one of our players. She begged me to be an assistant coach and come out so she could skate with our players. So we've really built a community here. Just come out and try it. And if you like it, then stay. If you don't, then try something else. There's no pressure.
Support or learn more at thegreatblizz.org. There are still slots left for Pembroke Public Library's January Poet Laureate webinar series, when popular educator Roz Kubik will present a look at 2 current-day American poets. Billy Collins served 2 terms as United States Poet Laureate from 2001 to 2003, and at 81 years old is still a regular guest on National Public Radio. Renowned for the profound observations contained in his conversational, humorous poetry, Mr. Collins has been referred to by the New York Times as the most popular poet in America. Ada Limon became the 24th Poet Laureate of the United States in July of 2022, making her our country's first Latina Poet Laureate. Ms. Limon is the author of 6 poetry collections and hosted the acclaimed poetry podcast, The Slowdown, in 2021 and 22. Don't miss this companionable afternoon of poetry and conversation, taking place on January 17th from 3:30 to 5. Visit the library's website to register. Next up is our Open Here podcast with host Tiff Phillips and her guest, life coach and professional organizer Kim Caple.
Hi, I'm with Kim Caple. She is a professional organizer and life coach and owner of Shine Life and Home. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So I got to ask you, what's your background? Where did you grow up?
So I'm a South Shore girl. I was born in Boston and then lived in Quincy for a little while. We then moved to Rainham. That's where I spent sort of most of my growing up years. And then I moved to Bridgewater in high school, but because Bridgewater Rainham's a regional school district, I was lucky enough to not have to switch schools. I went to Bridgewater Rainham Regional High School, and that's where I really found my love of the visual and performing arts and met my husband.
So what did you do before you became a life coach?
How long do you have?
We got some time.
It's sort of been a long journey, but I think that's kind of the norm these days. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in interior design from Oneida College, and I was an interior designer for about 5 years in Boston and San Francisco, mostly in the office design space. And it wasn't really quite fulfilling me in the way that I had hoped. And then, unfortunately, with the sudden death of my 19-year-old brother-in-law, that just changed everything for my husband and I, changed the course of life. And I just realized how short life was and how I really wanted a career that was meaningful and I felt like I was contributing. So I started working with adults with developmental disabilities in a vocational day program, which I loved. And then that led me to getting a teaching certification. And I taught elementary art for about 5 years. Also taught at various art programs in the community and at the college level. And then when my second daughter was born, I became a full-time stay-at-home mom. And when she was 6, I decided to get back into the workforce. And unfortunately, just because of lack of flexibility, going back into the classroom wasn't really an option. My husband's job was very demanding. He had a lot of nights and weekends. We didn't have a lot of family around to help, so I needed something with more flexibility. I was lucky enough to find a job within the Plymouth Public Schools for a program called Plymouth Family Network. It's grant funded and it provides programming and resources for families with children under the age of 6. And I actually still work there part-time. And then I became a life coach during COVID because what else was there to do? I had thought about it for a long time, and it was a great time to do it, something productive with my time that, so I was able to find an online program and really enjoyed it.
So I was reading on your website, and you said that at one point, as much as you loved and adored your family, you grew to resent your responsibilities, which I know a lot of people can relate to that. Mm-hmm. Why do you think, and I've heard that a lot, why do you think people are starting to feel that way, women in general, women in particular?
Yeah. I think, it's for a lack of options sometimes. I decided to stay home and be a full-time mom because of a lack of affordable childcare. It was going to cost more money for me to have 2 children in daycare than to be back in the classroom. And so that just didn't make sense for us financially. We didn't have that core family around, which I think a lot of people don't nowadays, that could help out. So it's a lack of choices maybe. And it's hard hard. It's hard work being full-time stay-at-home. It's demanding, it's isolating, and it can be really challenging. And especially if you didn't come by it by choice, but by necessity, it can cause, some anger and resentment. And I loved what I was doing, but I also think the mistake I made was over-identifying with my role as a mom. And I think it's really important to keep those things in your life that you find that bring you joy outside of motherhood, because that's only going to give you a more fulfilling life all around.
What was that turning point like for you?
So ironically, it was through an activity related to my children. I was a Girl Scout leader, and I went to a conference, and the keynote speaker was Lori Mackinac. She's a life coach in Wareham, my life coach now for over 10 years. But that's where I first met her, and I picked up a flyer at the conference, and she was offering a 6-week course that I couldn't afford as a stay-at-home mom at the time, but I just felt like I had more to learn from her, and that there was more that I was going to get from her at some point. So I kept that brochure. I referred back to it several times. I think I had it for several years. And I finally looked at it one day and just decided to make it a priority to take that 6-week Powerful Women class. And it just changed my whole way of thinking, like in terms of learning about, choices, responsibility, intention, mindfulness. It just opened up a whole new world to me that I had not been aware of before, and how to regain your own power. And slowly, like I said, it's been over 10 years, like step by step by step, I've been able to put those things into practice and make really positive changes.
What does a typical day look like for you?
So typical day, I'm gonna plug morning routine, because this has been one of those baby steps that's huge for me, that I've realized, really sets you up for success in the rest of your day. So my morning routine is I make my bed first thing when I get up. I never thought I'd be a person who made my bed every day.
I love it.
It literally takes less than 2 minutes, but I feel like once I've made my bed, like I got it together. And then I will have some coffee, chat with my husband for a minute, get my daughter off to school. And then another one of those key pieces is some kind of physical activity, whether it's stretching or cardio. I just know that I need to move my body in some positive way. And then meditation, short, could be 5 minutes, really key to my mental health. And then I'll get ready for the day, and I listen to some kind of podcast or audiobook that is inspiring and motivating, because a lot of times we don't have the motivation ourselves, but you can borrow it from somebody else. So I'll listen to that. And then the workday starts, whether it's a PFN day or it's a life coaching day. And that might be, for me, if it's life coaching, I could have a couple client calls or go to a client's house. I could be talking to an organization about doing a professional development program for them. And then picking my daughter up from school, and the whole after-school routine starts. And then, the whole dinner thing. And then after dinner, I might do a professional development workshop or have another client call, and then do that evening routine of preparing to make the next day successful. So, putting away your clothes, picking out an outfit for the next day, kind of reviewing my schedule for the next day to see what I can do the night ahead to prepare to make the next day successful.
There's definitely like an organization component to your business. Now, I have to ask, how do you think organizing your home, organizing yourself contributes to setting yourself up for success?
Yeah. So my previous mantra prior to my life coach was, I'm a train wreck, which you can imagine the results that came from that. I just felt completely unorganized. And that's what kind of started this whole journey for me, in terms of knowing that I needed to change, because that mantra wasn't serving me, but I didn't quite know how. And so over the course of all of these years and all of these baby steps, like, I've found hacks. I've found things that work for me and have worked for other people to help them, even if they're not naturally organized. I have ADHD. Like, organization does not come naturally to me. I do it now as a profession because I've had to work so hard at it. I know how to do it maybe in a way that other people don't, or I understand the struggles in a way that other people don't. So keeping myself organized is key to reducing my stress level, reducing my anxiety, keeping my house uncluttered. It just helps me function at a much better level.
And I have to ask, how has being a life coach fulfilled you?
I love working collaboratively. I just find that it's energizing. And as a life coach, working with clients, it's a very co-creative process. So when you're working with a client, you are together coming up with, what kind of changes they want to make, what those goals look like, what action steps is going to take to get there, and celebrating their wins. And I know how huge life coaching has been in my life and how much it has changed me for the better. And I just love being able to provide that for somebody else.
Do you have any good organization tips? I need to know. I want to pick your brain about this.
Yes, although the organization tip I love the best actually kind of sort of comes before the organization, and that is to reduce your inventory. The average American household has 300,000 items in it. I know, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, 300,000 items. And every one of those items is on your invisible mental to-do list, right? It's like, where is it? How am I going to store it? Does it need to be winterized? Does it have batteries? Did I let Aunt Matilda borrow it? Whatever it is. It's a lot on your mind. And so reducing inventory so that you're not organizing stuff you don't even need would be my best tip. And one of my favorite quotes is by William Morris. He was an English textile designer, and he said, "Have nothing in your house that you don't find to be beautiful or useful." So I think that is, for me, kind of been like the guiding, way that I decide what stays and what goes. And I think sort of the modern version of that is like Marie Kondo with, does it bring joy?
Right.
Yeah. And so I think, does it bring joy or is it useful? If it does, great. And if it doesn't, then it probably needs to go. So I think that is the best tip I could give is reduce your inventory, try to make it simple, organize only what you need to have.
So we're approaching 2024, and this will probably air in 2024. So what advice do you have for people who are maybe making some New Year's resolutions and want to follow through on them? Because most New Year's resolutions are gone within a month?
Yeah, 80% of New Year's resolutions fail before the end of January. So statistically, they don't work. I would say a couple of things. If you definitely want to have some goals for the new year, which isn't a bad thing, keep them very simple and break them down into baby steps, because we want to focus on progress over perfection. And you really need to have attainable goals. And when you see that progress, of course, it propels that momentum that you want to keep going. But I think the mistake most people make is they decide they want to change their whole life January 1st. And when they haven't done that by January 12th, they're overwhelmed and frustrated. And so keeping, a simple goal, and once you get there, then you can kind of get to the next goal. And also, I would say having an accountability partner is super helpful, having some kind of support and somebody to celebrate those wins. I actually don't do New Year's resolutions. I do something called One Word, which I also learned from life coach Lori. There's lots of books out there on it, and if you Google One Word, you'll find all kinds of information, but it's choosing one word that kind of has a theme for you for the year. So to figure out what that word is, I kind of like to make it like a self-care moment at the end of 2023, or at the beginning of 2024. Sit down, get a cup of tea, kind of review the past year. And again, remembering to celebrate what did work, because I think we so much focus on what doesn't work in our lives, we forget to celebrate the wins. So, what worked? What did I do well? What was I happy with? And then kind of like, all right, what would I like to see more of next year? What would I like maybe some less of? And you can start to see a theme. So for example, my word this year was joy. And I chose joy because I felt like I was feeling like the world was so heavy, so much going on, so much that was upsetting that I needed to create these big moments of joy in my life. That's how it started. And then by like February or March, when I wasn't scheduling in these huge joy events, I thought, wow, I'm really failing at joy. And I'm like, is that even possible? And then I re-examined and I'm like, all right, it's not about creating these huge joyful moments. It's about finding joy in the everyday, in little things that you're doing. And then I realized how inextricably connected joy and gratitude are. And it was about those little moments of gratitude. And then it kind of evolved into like, well, how can I bring joy to other people? Because that brings joy to me. And so you just really become like a student of that word, and it ends up permeating all areas of your life. So highly recommend.
I love that. It really condenses like your vision, your mission for the next year. I love that.
And you can't fail at one word.
Right. It's true. It's true. Keep it simple. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for you?
That's a good question. So when I started being a life coach, I said, you know what, I want to do this. I want to start it up while my youngest daughter's still in high school, but I'm just going to let it evolve organically because I do really want to enjoy the next year and a half I have with her before she goes off to college. So I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna bring. I would love to do some more workshops and retreats. I love doing retreats and more coaching and be able to help more people. But exactly what that looks like, I'm not sure yet.
And that's okay. You don't have to. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you subscribe to the belief that everyone has at least one book in them, and you've written yours, that makes you an author, if you can get your book published. But what then? Join the Plymouth Public Library for the virtual panel discussion about the challenges and rewards of being a debut author on January 29th from 7 to 8 p.m. Bring your questions for authors Lauren J.A. Baer, Rita Chang Eppig, and Nikita Perech, all of whom released their debut novels in 2023. Lauren, Rita, and Nikita will share the challenges and roadblocks of publishing, as well as the fulfillment and excitement of experiencing enthusiasm from readers who connect with their work. Register via the Plymouth Public Library website. Camp Twin Oaks was a residential camp that operated for 40 years on the Duxbury-Kingston line. Here's the story.
For the first part of its history, the South Shore town of Duxbury's economy and culture revolved around shipbuilding. Around the mid-1800s, the industry began to shift operations to Boston, where the deeper water of the bay worked better for the building of the types of ships in demand. This, coupled with more goods being transported by train and steamboat, started to change the fabric of Duxbury's economy. The shorelines and rural settings started drawing people with different motivations to its borders. People looking for some rest and recreation. Vacationers. The town's scenic spots became appealing escapes from Boston's crowds and pollution. As the 19th century turned to the 20th, boarding houses, summer cottages, resorts, and camps began to spring up. One of these places was a 1930s camp called Camp Twin Oaks. Camp Twin Oaks was opened on the Duxbury-Kingston town line in 1933 by three African-American sisters, Ella Louise Woodbury, Lillian May Louise Hayes, and Balua Louise Fogg. Nestled in an idyllic natural setting, there were 6 double cottages, each named after one of the sisters, including 3 sisters who were not partners in the business. The place was named for the 2 large trees that framed the main house. They began it as a residential summer camp for children and church groups from Boston looking for a breath of fresh air and fun camp activities. By the late 1930s, it expanded into a vacation destination for the Black community. It was the only resort on the South Shore catering specifically to African Americans at this time. Camp Twin Oaks soon had visitors coming from throughout the Northeast, finding the spot mainly through word of mouth and advertising in Black published newspapers such as New York's The Amsterdam News and The Voice, as well as publications in Chicago and Pittsburgh. The camp saw quite a few distinguished people from the Black community come through, including civil rights leader A. Phillips Randolph, James P. King of the Penn School, as well as many doctors and nurses from the Harlem Hospital. Camp Twin Oaks, like many other commercial resorts owned by and catering to African Americans at this time, were established in large part as a response to segregation and Jim Crow. Self-contained, they typically offered a range of amenities such as rooms for rent, meals and fine dining, bars, dance halls, beach access, and recreational facilities offering sports activities. After the death of Balua in the early 1940s, the sisters' partnership in Camp Twin Oaks dissolved. In 1941, the camp was put up for auction due to non-payment of taxes. Lillian May and her husband moved to Kingston and bought the Kingston Inn, opening it as a summer resort for Black vacationers. Ella and her husband John, however, stepped in, paid the back taxes, and became the sole proprietors of the camp. Camp Twin Oaks stayed in operation until 1974. And that, my friends, is the story of Camp Twin Oaks, a quaint camp and vacation spot that held an essential role in American cultural history. Thanks for spending time on the local scene.
While the city of Boston during the Civil War was known for its impassioned anti-slavery rhetoric, equal employment for Black Bostonians was not the rule. On January 21st at 2 p.m., join author Jacqueline Jones at the Duxbury Free Library for an author talk on her book, No Right to an Honest Living: The Struggles of Boston's Black Workers in the Civil War Era. In this Sunday Arts and Culture Series program, Ms. Jones will highlight the inordinate challenges to equal employment opportunities Black workers experienced in this area and the ingenuity many practiced in creating their own paths to financial sustenance. A two-time Pulitzer Prize finalist, Jacqueline Jones lives in Concord, Massachusetts. Visit the Duxbury Free Library website to register for the presentation. The Milken Family Foundation honors exceptional educators across the country, and Plymouth North High School English teacher Shelley Terry is the 2023 recipient of this prestigious award.
Oh, when did I want to first be a teacher? So if you asked my mom, it would be when I was in preschool. I would leave preschool with these fun little letter people, and I would ask her to stop at, I think the CVS on the way home had or the Tedeschi's had a photocopier, and I would make her make photocopies so I could go home and quote unquote teach to my little sister the little letters of the alphabet. As I kind of progressed through elementary school, I had a little bit more of an inkling, and then finally once I reached high school, I realized exactly what I wanted to be, a high school English teacher. I have my undergrad from the University of New Hampshire. I was a double major in English teaching and criminal justice. Two very different things, but at one point I was thinking about potentially being a teacher to inmates for a while, and then decided I wanted to go the more traditional route once graduating. So this is my 18th year at Plymouth North High School. This is where I've been all along. I have been pretty much teaching similar classes throughout those 18 years, so a print journalism class, a broadcast journalism class, and then American literature are kind of the ones that I most frequently teach, as well as AP language. I think probably most teachers have several teachers that inspired them to be a teacher. I think the most memorable one that I had in elementary school was Mrs. O'Brien, who I'm still in touch with. She's my 4th grade teacher. She instilled a love of learning, and 4th grade was a really difficult year for me health-wise, and I think just to have someone that cared so much was key. And then once I got to high school, my high school English teachers really shaped who I was. Ms. Carrick Helmer really got me into Shakespeare. And then finally, Mr. John Hopkins, who I'm also still in touch with. I took a class with him actually last spring in poetry. And he just instilled this love of The Great Gatsby and American Lit. And it's exactly why that's the most classes I teach are, in fact, American literature. The Milken Award was founded by this gentleman who wanted to appreciate teachers throughout the country, and we didn't know what the award was the day that it happened. We knew for about a week and a half that we had an all-school assembly and an award was happening. I assumed it was like something for the whole school, because why would you have the whole school for one teacher, which was mortifying. And when we actually realized about an hour before what the award was, oh, it's the Milken Award, we all went and started looking up what the qualifications were. So we found out like it had to be someone mid-career, someone who's passionate in the classroom but also tries to help people outside of the classroom. And so immediately at lunch that day, an hour before it happened, we all started throwing out names. And I think the most important thing that I want to make sure I always reiterate is that there are so many people at Plymouth High School that could have gotten this award. So many people are working hard. And then when I heard my name, I secretly wanted to crawl into a shell because I was like, oh my God, they just said my name. So at first it was complete panic, which I think you can kind of see on my face. And then by the time it actually happened, it was just astonishing. I think, you know, I was excited about that day in general because the person from the Milken Foundation that came and gave the speech just talked about how important it is to appreciate educators, and even just her words made me happy. And it didn't really quite sink in that I had also won this money as well. All my students keep joking about how like, oh, what have you done with your money? It's really about that they wanted to appreciate teachers. And I think that, number one, that doesn't happen enough. Especially when you get to the high school years, the Christmas presents stop, the end of the year cards stop. That's for elementary teachers. So for high school teachers, to know that people do appreciate all the hard work that you've done and that you've put in is really seen was really unbelievable. The other piece was finding out after the fact how many people had been interviewed about me for the months before this, and I had no idea. People in other departments, colleagues, my bosses. I was just very shocked at how much they knew about me when I was selected. I think the hardest thing about teaching is that they say, I don't even know what the percent is now. It's probably higher than it was when I started 18 years ago. How many percent of teachers leave after the first 5 years? It is a million times different than it was 18 years ago. Every single year brings something new, especially recently. I think with technology, cell phones changed the way we taught. COVID changed the way we taught. Now as a high school English teacher, we have artificial intelligence and ChatGPT changing the way that we teach. It is hard to be someone who always has to keep changing what they're doing every single year, but it's always the kids that bring you back to it, because in the end, yeah, these kids can put in an answer into ChatGPT and it can give them an answer, but our importance in our classroom is to make sure that we're teaching kids to really read critically, think critically, and write critically. And I think that no matter how many advances there are in technology, that's our goal. And every single one of my students will say to not give up. Like, that is my goal, is like never give up. I don't really let kids just not do the work. I hound them, I chase them, I email their houses, I call their parents, I do whatever I can. And so I think by the time they leave my classroom, my goal is they realize what they're capable of, and I'm hoping as they go through life, they realize to not just give up easily and to move forward and always try their best.
The Red Cross is well known as an invaluable source of help for people during emergencies, but they are also mission-driven to empower people to help themselves and each other. What does that mean? Visit the Pembroke Council on Aging for a 9:30 a.m. coffee hour on January 23rd to find out, when you'll learn some simple steps you can take in advance of hard times. Being Red Cross ready may not prevent a disaster, but can help mitigate the damage to your home and family. Call the COA at 781-294-8220 to sign up. Next up is poet Marilyn Gove in reading of her own original work.
And next I would like to introduce actually a new neighbor of mine. Her name is Marilyn Gove. Please come up.
I hate when the mic is taller than me. Each year the podium gets taller too, and I get smaller. Can you hear me? Yes. Good. I have one poem here tonight. It's a little longer. sort of in the middle, like medium, I would say. And it's my first time reading during the festival, maybe my third time, while I'm relatively new here in Plymouth. And there's some drama in it, so I might be a runner-up to Miriam in terms of performance tonight. We'll see. We'll see. See if I can give her a run for her money, huh? Will you borrow my kimono? Next time, please. It's quite chic. So this actually is a poem for my cousin David Prost. He was a war veteran, and I needed to write it. I wanted to write it because I wanted to make him visible to the world. It's a prose poem. It's divided into 4 sections, and it has 4 different voices. I think the important thing about this poem is that I grew up in a Jewish home, and so I put together a brief translation of some of the Yiddish words that appear in the poem, and I would like to just briefly talk about them so you understand their meaning as we actually move through the poem. The first word, and you might know some of these, the first word is kibbutz, which basically means to stand around or to sit around and talk, have a lot of body movements. You see some of the performance coming in, Miriam? Schwitz is another great word. It means to sweat, to schwitz. Tallis basically is a prayer shawl, and when you go into a temple or a synagogue, you'll oftentimes see the men in these prayer shawls. A yarmulke is a skull cap worn during prayer, generally by the men. The women wear hats in conservative temples. Kaddish, a mourner's Kaddish, is a prayer that's basically said, it's respecting the dead and also proclaims the greatness of God. And mishigas, which was used all the time in my home because there was so much mishigas, means to be mad, foolish, or crazy. Okay? So the title of this poem is At the Unveiling of a Jewish War Veteran. 1, the unveiling. It is 100 degrees in the shade. Family gathers in shorts and sandals to pay their respects. No one wears black. A niece pulls up on a red Harley. Her entrance startles everyone. Women in sun hats move in circles and kibitz about the old days. Their foreheads bead with schwitz. Men walk the perimeter, arms folded behind their backs. The rabbi arrives wearing a tallis and yarmulke. We walk in single file to the sun-baked grave. 2, the veteran's sister. I loved my brother. He was such a hoot, taught himself how to play piano, graduated college with an aeronautical engineering degree, became a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy, piloted planes. He loved the sky. Up there, he could bear his soul, dress it with wings. Then came Vietnam. The killing. His lifetime, holed up in a psych ward. I wanted more for him. I miss him so much. In unison, the mourner's Kaddish begins. Yiskadal ve'yiskadash shemei rabbah. 3, the women kibitz about the veteran. I'm telling you, he was Hollywood handsome. Runner-up to Tony Curtis. A real looker in that uniform. Just gorgeous and such a mensch. So much potential he had. We talked once, maybe twice. Hard to remember. His whole life ahead of him, marriage, Children, a career. Did you ever hear him on the piano? A sound so beautiful it made you quell. A boy like him, sensitive, thoughtful, nothing left but the Michigas. 4, the final entry from the Veterans Journal read by the niece. Thou shalt never drop napalm over villages of Viet Cong. Thou shalt never call those different from myself hurtful names. Thou shalt never put females and children in harm's way. Thou shalt never trust leaders who forsake their veterans. Thou shalt never follow any god into battle to kill others. Thou shalt never use firebombs to feign peace. Thou shalt never fly. Thou shalt never fly. Thank you.
The art of collaging is meditative and creates a document and keepsake of moments in time. The Kingston Public Library invites tweens and teens ages 11 through 18 to the library on January 25th at 3 p.m. to experiment with photo collaging. Bring your own pictures, stickers, and magazines, or use the library supplies and just bring your imagination. This event takes place in the teen room. Jean Brulette is the instructor for the Introduction to Painting with Watercolors 6-week workshop offered as part of the Pembroke COA Lifelong Learning Series. On Tuesdays at 9:30 a.m. from January 30th to March 5th, spend immersive time building on skills you'll learn each week. This course is for those new to watercolor painting or for painters who want to go back to the basics. All materials are provided, and your cost for the entire 6-week program, sponsored in part by the COA Gift Fund, is just $30. Class size is limited, so call the COA to register. Don't miss a performance of talented high school a cappella performers at the Plymouth Center for Active Living on January 26th at 1 p.m. Gifted singers from Plymouth North and Chelmsford High School will set a happy mood with their seamless harmonies. Registration is requested, but drop-ins are welcome. And that, my friends, wraps up what's good and good to know this week on the local scene. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching. We are grateful for your attention. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe to the local scene here and share everywhere. Thank you, friends.